Anthony Nogues sold cigarettes, not a racing engineer, not a safety expert, a guy who sold cigarettes. And in 1929, he looked at the streets of Monaco and thought, yeah, let's put race cars through here. The stone walls, the harbor right there at the edge, the tunnel, all of it. Nobody stopped him. So that's your origin story. No blueprint, no safety plan, just a cigarette salesman who had an idea and people dumb enough to say yes. Years later, Nelsonpiquet showed up to race there. 3 world championships, the whole thing. And after doing it, he said Monaco felt like riding a bicycle around your living room. Coming from a 3-time world champion, that's not a compliment. Barriers inches away on both sides, no room for error, and if you do mess up, there's no gravel trap waiting for you. Just water. Alberto Ascari found that out in 1955. 2 world titles went off at the chicane and his car went straight into the harbor, in front of everyone. He climbed out with a broken nose and waited for someone to do something. They kept racing, no barrier went up, no meeting happened. A 2-time world champion just drove into the ocean in front of a live crowd, and the people running the show looked at each other and carried on. That's the part they leave out when they talk about glamour and prestige, and it was about to get a lot uglier than a broken nose. The Ascari crash was a warning. Monaco didn't care. So the race kept happening. The yachts kept coming. Drivers kept threading cars through streets that were never built for this, and everyone just kind of assumed it would be fine. Lorenzo Bandini assumed that too. 31 years old, Ferrari driver. He was leading the championship that year, the kind of guy everyone in the paddock actually liked. Not complicated, not difficult, just a good driver and a decent person who people were genuinely rooting for. Lap 82, 1967. His Ferrari clipped a barrier at the harbor front, the car flipped, and it caught fire. Now here's where it gets bad. The stuff lining the barriers around him, the thing that was supposed to soften a crash. You want to know what that was? Hay bales. Actual hay bales, farm hay bales, stacked up along one of the most unforgiving street circuits on the planet because someone thought that was a reasonable idea. They caught fire with the car. Of course they did. Bandini was stuck in a burning Ferrari on live television while the crowd stood there watching. At some point, it stopped looking like a racing incident and started looking like something much worse than that. He survived the crash. 3 days later, he was dead from the burns. After that, hay bales got banned from every circuit in Formula 1, which is a sentence that only exists because a man had to burn to death on camera before anyone decided hay was a bad idea. People pushed hard to get Monaco off the calendar after that. Not quietly either. Out loud, in print, with real weight behind it. Monaco stayed on the calendar. It always does. So hay bales are banned. Bandini is dead. And Formula 1 is finally asking the question nobody wanted to ask out loud before. What is actually stopping these cars from killing people here? They looked at the barriers, the walls, the whole setup. Anthony Nogues, the cigarette salesman, put together back in 1929 and never really touched since. The answer was not much. Stone walls and the general assumption that it would probably be fine. Enter Armco barriers, those corrugated steel guardrails you see on every street circuit today. Sounds boring until you understand what they actually do. A stone wall stops a car by not moving. Simple as that, which means every bit of energy from that crash goes straight into the driver. The wall takes nothing. You take everything. Armco moves. It bends, it deforms, it eats some of that energy before it ever gets to you. That difference between a wall that doesn't give and a barrier that does is the difference between walking away and not walking away. Simple idea. Took a man burning to death on camera to make it happen. And Monaco still dragged its feet. Slowly, corner by corner, only when the pressure got too loud to ignore. Because putting steel barriers along those streets meant saying something that people running this race really didn't want to say. That the whole thing had been dangerous from the start and they knew it. Hard thing to admit when you've spent 30 years selling glamour. But the barriers went in. And with them came this quiet acknowledgement that Ascari's broken nose and Bandini dying 3 days after that race weren't just bad luck or freak accidents. The circuit was showing them exactly what it was. Monaco always had 2 choices, change or stop existing as a race venue. And the question nobody could answer cleanly was how much it could change before it stopped being Monaco. That question didn't go away. It just moved somewhere darker. Then there's the tunnel. 290 kilometers per hour. Full Mediterranean sunlight 1 second, and then you're inside and it's dark. Actually dark. Not dim, not moody. Dark. Here's the thing about human eyes. They need time to adjust. A fraction of a second, totally normal, completely biological. But at 290 kilometers per hour, that fraction of a second covers several car lengths. Several car lengths where you can't see properly. Every driver who ever went through that tunnel did it at least partially blind. Not once, every single lap. And for years, the lighting inside was so bad it barely counted as lighting. A few bulbs on the ceiling, more of a suggestion than anything useful. Formula One kept racing there anyway. Not for 1 year, decades. Nobody pulled the plug after Ascari went into the harbor. Nobody pulled it after Bandini. Nobody pulled it after any of the moments where Monaco showed exactly what it was. And you might think at some point the safety argument got loud enough that someone with real power stepped in. They didn't. Because here's the honest reason Monaco survived every single one of those conversations. It wasn't the barriers. It wasn't the lighting fixes or the chicane redesigns or any of the safety work that happened quietly over the years. It was the yachts, the casino, the famous faces in the grandstands, the photographs that look like nothing else on the calendar. Monaco doesn't sell a race. It sells a feeling, and that feeling is worth a lot of money to a lot of powerful people. A dangerous street race that looks glamorous is much harder to shut down than one that doesn't. Monaco always looked glamorous. Car in the harbor, hay on fire, drivers flying blind through a tunnel at 290 kilometers per hour for years before anyone properly fixed the lighting. Didn't matter. The cameras were rolling, the yachts were docked, and the people who could have pulled it off the calendar looked at all of that and decided the view was too good to touch. That's the most honest explanation for why the race is still there. That's always been the explanation. Next time someone calls Monaco a boring billionaire parade, a processional, a yacht show with cars in the background, tell them about Ascari. Two-time world champion. Drove straight into the Mediterranean Sea in front of thousands of people, climbed out with a broken nose, and watched them do absolutely nothing about it. Tell them about Bandini. 31 years old, leading the championship, stuck in a burning Ferrari while hay bales caught fire around him. Dead 3 days later. And the circuit that took him was back on the calendar the following year. Tell them about the tunnel. Drivers hitting 290 kilometers per hour and going partially blind on every single lap. Not occasionally. Every lap. For decades. While the people who could have done something looked at the yachts and the cameras and decided the view was too good to change. Monaco has been reckless. It's been absurd. It's been genuinely ugly in ways the glamour shots will never show you. But boring it has never been. So here's what I want to know. Does Monaco still earn its place on the modern calendar? Or has the glamour just been covering for something that should have been fixed or shut down a long time ago? Drop it in the comments. And if anything here changed how you see that race, hit like on the way out. Do it for Bandini. Do it for Ascari. Do it for every driver who flew into that tunnel and trusted that the darkness wasn't going to be the last thing they saw. They earned it.